I'm going to digress into yesterday's conversation where we talked about the Christian ideal of marriage. So were you feeling trapped in the marriage, or were you feeling pinned under the expectations of Christian?
That one. Hey everyone, I'm Hallease, a digital storyteller and video producer.
And I'm Mr. Hallease, and I made Thanksgiving dinner.
You did. It was good.
I came up with that.
Yeah. Sorry, and this is the Stumblewell podcast, a couple that you know, talking about relationships and marriage and other such things.
Roll the music.
Because of my own trauma.
Oh, okay. Word.
I am very cognizant about who owns what and who controls what. And I've been in, relationships and talked to people. And like a big red flag for me is people who talk about wanting to do business or wanting business advice, or no, I don't want to go into, no, I don't. I want everything to be separate. I don't even want you to know how much money I have. I have no dollar. I'm broke. I have $0 in my bank account, actually.
Wow.
And so I am fascinated.
But how can you build with that? You can't build. Like not to push back, but there has to be some level of,
I love this. Yeah.
There has to be some level of trust in a marriage, because in other words, why'd you get married? At a very base instinct, right? Moving love aside of all of that, right? You get married to have a partner, and it is a contractual agreement, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't, there has to be a certain level of trust. To me, it makes the most sense to have him be the only person who gets to sign off on my accounts. If I don't trust my husband, then who the hell do I trust? I trust him with my life. I got to be able to trust him with my money,
We're getting into therapy territory right now. But
okay.
I think
today's podcast episode comes to you via me through an interview I did with Kimberly Foster over on her channel. It was basically a topic talking about marriage and in regards to husbands/partners, long-term partners, becoming like the production hand, and this is in the heterosexual sense, where the woman has created a platform for herself online, whether it be on Instagram, YouTube, wherever, and eventually the partner joins in to help just manage that, run that. And apparently people don't like that female content creators have partners that help. That was like the sparking of the conversation.
Is the animus, this is an aside, but is the animus aimed at the spouses or the creators?
From what I could gather, I guess the creators themselves. So this is also very fascinating, because I had no idea that was like annoying to people. All that to say, though, the reason why I wanted to have this podcast episode was because as she was talking to me through the interview, full disclosure, she has what does she call it? Anxious avoidant relationship tendencies. That is what she calls it. Or I'm sure it's like a term, like anxious avoidant is, I guess, you're slightly untrusting of partners all the time.
Sounds like a Pokemon. Like, my spirit animal is anxious avoidant.
Oh, you don't say spirit animal anymore. That's native people's.
Okay.
But anyway, point of the story. In that interview, she mentioned that, and then she kind of kept pressing on this topic that kind of got me like, oh, now I feel icky. I should talk to you about this. Yeah, do you feel trapped in this relationship? Because she kept bringing up the fact that I'm the breadwinner, I'm the one that's making the income. In traditional relationships, that's usually reasons why women can't leave, is because the husband's usually the breadwinner. So, what are they going to do? And I was like, oh, dadgum. Is it me? Am I the drama?
Well, not to draw it out anymore. Yeah, I think so, maybe.
What?
I mean, I do not feel physically trapped.
Sure.
I also don't feel financially trapped. Like I could leave at any point.
Okay.
But I do feel, and this may be tangential. When I say it, tell me if it's something to say for later. But
okay.
I do feel like, neutered is the better word, I guess.
Oh, neutered. Okay. All right. Take that in. Soak it up. Swirl it around. It's got good legs. Elaborate.
Well, we've talked about in previous podcasts what my issues and my working through what I felt my value was. Mm-hmm. So what I felt my inherent or internal value was, as opposed to what is my value in the relationship. I'm still, struggling with my internal value because, work. What is my work?
Sure.
And in relationship, I feel valued by you, but I don't feel like I do as much. I don't know. It just feels like the value of what I do is different. It just weighs differently. It's still on the scale and it still weighs something, but I don't quite know what it is.
That's so interesting. Okay.
I do feel like it's not a direct answer to your question. Like I don't feel trapped because I know, women had no access to the finances traditionally. Like decades ago, like a homemaker had to squirrel away, perhaps. I'm just listing a scenario. Mm-hmm. And then they would have money, but they would never be able to outright do anything. Did they have any actual claim to the money that was in the account? Was it even a shared account?
Sure.
All of our stuff is shared.
Yeah.
I know how much we/you are bringing in, how much we have in the accounts. Yeah, I don't feel trapped. I just feel, less than. I do feel like, and that was the point that I was going to make in this podcast, was that I feel like I need to carve out more of an identity somewhere.
Okay.
On a physical plane, I need to just carve out an identity. Is that volunteering more? Is that joining a writing group, which I am, where I can talk with other people or develop in that way. But what I have now, I feel like is very home ec, very domestic. Because I stay home most of the time, don't really interact with too many people.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. You come home and then I start dinner. And in a specific way, I do feel like, I'm going to say Stepford wife. It doesn't quite fit in, but I feel like a homemaker.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for you to get home. It's like, and then even though you're in the office working, I'm waiting for you to clock out because you're not mentally available most of the time.
Interesting.
And so then you do clock out, and then I'm like, welcome. I made dinner. Fine. And then we do dinner, and then that's it.
Wow. To me, it just...
it's not an answer to the problem that you queried or posited, but it's another problem.
It's another problem. Interesting. Well, I also, because I know you mentioned, I remember when our co-working office closed. I think it was April.
Summer.
Anyway, the co-working space that we were in closed. And I remember as soon as I told you that it was closing, you were like, I have to find somewhere else to go immediately. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. I didn't necessarily feel that way.
Yeah.
But you were the one that was like, I got to do something else. Otherwise, I won't ever see anybody. And I was like, yeah.
Was that my reasoning? I was worried that it was going to be more productivity.
I mean, you've given that reason of productivity. But now as we've gone through months where, the co-working space is officially gone and you stay home most of the time, a lot of the times you have mentioned because I don't really see anybody. And you've mentioned that a couple times. Enough where I'm like, yeah, the reason why you don't see anybody is because you don't go anywhere. So I go to coffee. And so that's me getting that feeling.
But I don't drink caffeine anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's kind of a drain there. And the internet's kind of a...
The internet, you haven't been back. They fixed it.
I know.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. I think for me, it's just fascinating to hear that you feel like domesticated. I find it also fascinating that you didn't use the word emasculated.
Beep, 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 beep.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening/watching this episode of the Stumblewell podcast. If you're new here, please like, share, and subscribe here on this platform that we're on. That's probably YouTube and maybe Spotify itself. Thanks. And also engage down below in the comments, especially on YouTube, because that helps algorithmically with that sort of stuff. And then if you're listening to us, wherever you're listening to us, make sure to rate us there. 5 stars is preferred, but we love constructive criticism and feedback as long as it's constructive. If you want to take it a step further, you should join the Patreon, patreon.com/Hallease. There you get early access to these podcast episodes, as well as exclusive content and merch. We have some new patrons. Sandy Smith, welcome. Mickey, welcome. Johanna E, welcome. Welcome to the Patreon. Thank you so much. We're happy to have you. Anyway, back to the podcast. Do you feel emasculated? Am I not letting you be a man, Christopher?
No, so...
Gotta let men be men.
What is the joke that we had? So, and in one video, I don't even remember what it was, but there was a commenter that was like...
Oh, it was in Kim's video.
It was in that video?
Yes, it was in her
Who
video.
Is this and the commenter said, yeah. Who is this emasculated man?
He was like...
Feminine. Effeminate man.
Effeminate man. He called you I'm assuming the commenter was another guy.
It tickled me.
That's how that tends to go.
That tickled me.
You were like laughing a lot.
Yeah,
it was only when silly things.
It was only when he like dug into you, and I was like, okay, that's a line.
Yeah. Made a lot of like, tell me you hate dark skinned women without telling me you hate dark skinned women comments, and I was like, whoa, dude. Expert
at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, called me an effeminate man, and it's like, I mean, I don't know what that means. Am I more in touch with my feelings than the average man? No.
No,
unfortunately,
you don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
Oh wow, okay.
I mean, like there are others that are better at it.
Sure.
Like,
I would say you're above average, though.
Am I emotionally intelligent? Yes. I feel like I can read a room quite well. I could feel like I can read a person quite well.
Sure.
I don't think that's a quality that's quote unquote effeminate or feminine or makes you any less masculine. Well, okay. So like I am not the foremost expert on this, but it's not a cup. Like you can't take things out of it and then have less in the cup. It's you. You can be a mixture, and we talked about this in a previous podcast. You can be a mixture of masculine and feminine. It's okay.
Yeah.
And again, It's not like there's oil and water in the glass and you see it swirling. It's just one glass. It's a homogeneous mixture. It is what you are. You're a mixture of characteristics. It's whatever. I don't feel emasculated. I think people see my role in the relationship and how the tables have turned in terms of you bringing money and me not, and question it, and maybe throw those labels out there, but I don't feel it.
Interesting. Okay.
I feel a little bit lost in my identity, not in terms of masculine, feminine, but more just like I've lost my sense of like expertise. Oh. So as a nurse, maybe that was the thing that was feeding this nameless emotional monster in my head or persona or whatever. But it was like, oh yeah. So in the field, I wasn't even like an expert. Mm-hmm. But in the field, I had clinical knowledge, and it was decently strong. And I could, apply that, help other people with it, lend that out to patients. So like I had knowledge that I could use and leverage. I had experience that I could use and leverage. And it was in this very specific niche, but I had it. And so going into writing, I don't have an MFA. I didn't go to school for it. I'm learning on the fly, producing work that is or is not, we're questioning that value, putting that aside. And then also helping you in production, which again, didn't go to school for, not classically trained. And so I'm always walking on eggshells is maybe putting it a little too strongly, but I don't know quite what I'm doing. So like answering emails, easy enough, and it's something that I've fallen into, but it's like, what's too much? Like how much to ask for? What's too much? Am I in my wheelhouse? And like on a shoot, ordinarily, like I could take command in a situation differently, where it's just like, we're doing it this way because, you know, like there's a clear chain of command. Mm-hmm. And on set, there is and there isn't, and it's unspoken, and it's something that you just pick up over the years. There's an uncomfort or discomfort for me in like not knowing that. And so being on those sets and getting like weird looks or people like correcting you or people helping you along the way, it's like I'm far enough in my age where professionally I'll use the term clout. Like I had clout, I had a leg to stand on, and then I'm moving, or I have moved. And I think this is actually the first time that I'm verbalizing this, but I've moved into two fields that I am just very uncomfortable in. Existing at home, I mean, I have no issues. Cooking, I enjoy cooking. I enjoy cooking for you. I enjoy cooking for people who enjoy eating my food. So I don't have issues with that. Doing chores and doing everything else, like all that's fine. Domestic stuff, not a problem. But I feel like outside of that, and outside of our relationship, because I feel like in the relationship, I'm very comfortable. I'm comfortable with you and our dynamic. Outside of that, my professional space, it's discomfort. Like it's been discomfort for 2 years. There are times where I feel comfortable, and then like that, like it's blown away in the wind, and then I'm uncomfortable again.
Yeah.
Is that a product of the relationship, of you bringing me in? I mean, yes and no. Does that make me feel trapped? No, but I feel like...
I hear you saying all this, and I just, like, my immediate thought is like, how does Hallease help with that? Does she help with that? You know what I mean?
That's more of an innate drive for Chris. This is a Chris-driven solution, I think.
Oh.
I feel trapped in a cage of my own making.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't feel trapped in the relationship. I feel like if you were more possessive over money, sure, then I would be concerned about, oh, well, I can't leave.
Yeah.
Or emotionally, I guess, if you were either more abusive, or physically if you were more abusive. It's just like...
The obvious things?
Well, sure, like overbearing or anything like that. But
Sure. Maybe
maybe it's just a product of me being a man, where I feel like, I mean, I could literally just step outside and I'm fine.
Right. I guess so. As long as you don't feel trapped in the relationship. That was you're talking about other things of like trapped.
No, because it's to really break down that question. Yeah, I mean, technically I am dependent on you. Very much so.
Sure.
So, I mean, there is a tether, an umbilical cord from me to you for my livelihood. My livelihood is tied to your livelihood.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if you were to, quote unquote, cut me off or something, divorce me just all of a sudden, then yeah, I would be in a bad spot.
Would you, though? I don't think you would be, technically.
I mean...
I would owe you alimony. Remember we talked about
this?
this?
I guess so.
Remember we talked about this before? You joked about it, too. You were like, oh, now is the time to leave because I could get alimony out of this. And I was like, oh, no, you're right.
But it's going to take time.
Right, yeah, sure. Yeah.
And even then, it's like, you can still bail on it. It's not like any of this is set in stone.
Sure.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, you can bail on it, but, like, you can go to jail.
If they find you. Good luck finding you in the Bahamas.
Right. Well, now they got it, yeah.
Well, they just arrested that crypto guy in the Bahamas.
Oh, did they really? I have no idea what's going on with that. Okay.
Oh, it's messy.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I think that's why for me, I've always been very like, you have access to everything. Because this was something that Kimberly brought up in the interview. Like it was interesting because I can't remember exactly what she said. I feel like if I find it, I'll like put it into the podcast. But she said something to the degree of like, you know, if I ever get a long-term partner, I don't know if I don't think I would ever even let them be aware of how much money I make. As far as they're concerned, I make nothing. And I was like, my immediate response to that was then why are you with them, one? And how do you build?
Right.
Like the whole point, like love aside in long-term relationships, especially in like marriage contracts, if you will, the whole point of them is that you are stronger together, right?
And trust.
Yeah, and trust. But even then, it's like it's why when people get divorced, alimony's a thing. Like the whole point is to be in contract and to be like in, I don't even know, like trust and in exchange for one another. You decide what those roles need to be in the relationship for it to feel like the exchange that you're down with, but there has to be an exchange for it to work. And so if you're already coming in being like, you don't ever need to know how much money I make, then it's like you already don't trust the person you're in a very serious contract with. Why are you in this contract with them?
Yeah. I'm just wondering, this might be a very stupid question, but can a spouse feel trapped in the same way that a spouse felt trapped in the 1950s? Unless you, I guess, physically moved us to a very isolated location.
Yeah.
And so, like, I couldn't walk anywhere. I couldn't go anywhere. There's no money. This is weird. So, like, end of the world situation.
Yeah.
And I'm unhappy. But you're supplying the food. You're supplying, like, all the physical needs. And there's nowhere else to go. So then, do I feel trapped in that situation? Yes. If I'm unhappy, sure.
Sure.
But I feel like in the old days of very, very strong, very thick-walled patriarchy,
Yeah.
there was a devaluing of women outside the home. And there literally was, I mean, it had happened during World War II, but there was almost no emphasis on a woman's value outside of a relationship, outside of a home. And that's no longer the case. And so I'm wondering if I don't feel trapped, and which I've alluded to earlier, because I'm a man, because I know that there is opportunity out there. But in the same way, again, short of physical, emotional, financial abuse,
Sure.
which is like you're leveraging all of those things against the other person, I don't know if someone's going to necessarily feel trapped. Do you feel like that's a fair statement in these times?
I don't know. I don't know if that's a fair statement, because then that makes me think back to like the beginnings of our relationship, where you were the breadwinner, like you made the most money of the two of us, and even then
it's like someone with 3 acorns saying, "Wow, you have the most acorns." It's like, we just have acorns.
I know. I was gonna like follow it up with, even though like neither of us were really, we were both trying to figure things out. But I remember like feeling in those moments, I don't want to say feeling trapped, but feeling like this has to work because I can't, like, what do I do if this doesn't work? You know what I mean?
What is the worst case possibility in that scenario? You go back to your parents, tail tucked between your legs. They would not necessarily support you 100%, but they would give you a place to stay and rest, and then
I don't know if they would have.
Launchpad.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, no, I mean, if the marriage had gone south or something, I think they would have.
I think this might just be my own cultural like unlearnings still going on. Because now I'm at a point in my life where I think like, if things didn't work out, it sucks, but life goes on. You know what I mean? Like life goes on. But I do very much remember feeling in the beginning, being so young, thinking like my world will like break down if I don't make this work. Like if I don't work through these things, you know? So I don't know. I hesitate. I think the point you make is valid of like in these times where, yes, women, generally speaking, obviously it's not the same, but generally speaking, have more autonomy and more like value over their lives. Things are just different. Like it's almost like that idea of it's like trickle up helping, where it's like the reason why the American Disabilities Act was so popular. Like it ended up mostly helping like mothers with strollers more than people with disabilities, like just having elevators in places and things like that. Or just like affirmative action, mostly helping white women, didn't actually really much, help people of color. Well, it did, but like disproportionately, it ended up helping others who already had a level of privilege to lean on. So to that point, I think you might be right.
I'm going to digress into yesterday's conversation where we talked about the Christian ideal of marriage.
Yeah.
So were you feeling trapped in the marriage, or were you feeling pinned under the expectations of Christian?
That one.
Yeah.
I was feeling that one.
Of a Christian marriage, or like how a woman should act. And again, this is like, well, a woman has no value. And again, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but a woman has no value outside of like this Christian ideal of a marriage where you must serve. By serving God, you serve the man, or by serving man, you serve God. And both of those statements are true.
Yeah. It was really hard. I will say it was really...
Submission to the man.
Yeah. It was really hard because at the same time, and we talked about that yesterday, like even within my own home growing up, there were contradictions. And we actually talked about this on Kimberly's podcast too, of just like... me being the breadwinner now, does that make me myself uncomfortable? And I was like, no, because my mom made more money than my dad for a good part of their marriage as well. So it isn't something I'm not used to, or that like throws me at all. And so I grew up in that, and yet I still got like the conservative Christian, I guess. I don't feel like that feels too extreme.
Traditional. Sure, there we go. I like that better.
The traditional Christian values still got thrown in, even though my own family didn't necessarily adhere to them. I still felt a need to do them when we first got married. And yeah, I feel like the first few years of our marriage was me unlearning, or just figuring out what it meant to actually be your partner specifically, not a partner, to anyone. But like, what does Chris actually, like, what value do you actually bring for Chris?
Right. And I did not want a submissive wife.
Right, yeah.
I did not know what to do in terms of domestic duties. So like in terms of helping around in the place that we live. So like supporting each other in that way. But I was not asking for a submissive wife. I was not asking for, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I think it was also weird because you never asked for it, and yet I felt like that was what you wanted, though. And it's like, why are you making that assumption? You know what I mean?
And it's possible that maybe I did. I don't know.
I don't know if you necessarily did. I mean, I don't know if I even gave you the space to like answer the question. You know what I mean? I feel like from the jump, I just like fell into it and was trying to do it. So like, and also because, yeah, you were the one working. Remember, I didn't have a job, so I was like looking for things. And so I just felt the need to, similar to what you were talking about now, of like when Chris comes home and you like start dinner, this and that, whatever.
Well, I think part of that was probably due to me, because in that mindset, I did not understand value outside of, where it's like, well, you're doing things at home and that's great. I'm doing things in a W-2 job and that's great. But sort of like you going into YouTube or freelance or whatever, I didn't understand the value of what you were trying to do, which I understand now.
Sure, yeah.
After the fact. But again, this is like those men talking about, in hindsight,
right?
Talking about how have I done right or wrong in the relationship? And of course, look at my wife and all these things that I've done to her. And it's like, yeah, you've burned down the forest. You've already burned down the forest. So of course you're going to look behind you and think, oh my God, what a terrible person I was to burn down that forest. And then you like flick another light or something to the ground.
Yeah.
Not sure where I was going with that, but I like just saying it.
Okay.
If the marriage is a house, and I'm living in the house, and the house burns to ashes, somehow, some way, structurally this would never work, but the house is burned to ashes and it's still standing, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so, like, I'm not going to stay in the marriage when there's nothing there. You just touch it and then the ash crumbles. So, like, why would I feel trapped in a house made of ash? And again, I don't want to use the term delusion because it's a little stigmatized, but you could say, well, I mean, there's still something here. And again, you have all these expectations, societal, from institutions, church being one of them, family, and that might make you feel trapped, but you 100% infinitely earning more money than me, because I'm not earning money, but you earning more money than me and being in control of the finances and I don't know what else, does not make me feel trapped.
Okay.
I have my own walls up, like my own little pillow fort in the corner. I'm like, I can't leave. Chris, dinner's ready. I can't leave. It's just all these expectations just weighing down. It hurts. And you just come over and lift a pillow up.
I wonder if part of those feelings that you have too are also because you've chosen a creative career path where there is no, it's not like nursing where you go to school, you get a certain type of certification, and then you get a job in that certification, and then it's very clear what you are qualified / allowed to do and what you're not, you know? And it's like you are, as a nurse, you cannot write a prescription as
Right.
you know, nurse practitioner, you can't. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like things
In certain states.
Right, in certain states. But like it's just so much more structured. Whereas with being an artist, it's like, yeah, you're a writer of what, which genre, where does it go? Like
Who's seen it?
The criteria is non-existent and or just so intangible and like impossible to define that I can see how if you're getting into it, you're just kind of like, I'm rolling in the deep, you know? Yeah. I still come back to like, well, how do I help you with that? How do I help you with those feelings? But yeah, I guess I gotta just be like,
I don't know.
Just gotta figure it out on its own, you know? Just gotta be here to listen or whatever.
I went dark in my head. I was like, I just need to print some of these books and then go out panhandling and be like, spirit change, and then they'll give me spirit change, and then I'll pan them a book. Like, here you go.
Wow. I mean,
and then
marketing.
I'm getting, no, that's not marketing. That's just like what's happening here.
That's how
I'm a writer, but I can't get published. Here, please. I need to feed my family. That's with my wife who's, I don't need it. I was like, oh, thank you for the 50 cents or whatever. Here's a copy of the book.
What?
That's an interesting social experiment.
I think so. And also, I was going to say, I forgot her name now, but the woman who started, the woman who makes the tea that I interviewed for the Target series.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was how she started that company. Was she figured out what the recipe was finally, and then she would just sell it out of the back of her car. Like kind of how Mo was doing with the knockoff stuff. Like she was just doing that.
LSILT.
There we go. LSILT.
At your nearest Target.
Yeah, check them out. If you can find it. So tasty.
Get the sugarcane one.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Yes.
If you have diabetes.
You can have some.
Factor it in.
Yeah, but like factor it into your struggle. Anyway, but yeah, just thinking about that. I mean, that's why I'm kind of like, that is an interesting social experiment. To have like 50 copies of like one short story. I would say do it like a short story though. Like a little pamphlet and then be like, boop. Like a Jehovah's Witness. On the way back from the grocery store, there was a woman with a sign that was like, I have kids and family and I can't afford X, Y. I didn't even read it. Sure.
I just saw that she was there and she was selling roses.
Yeah, I've seen
wilted, droopy roses.
Yeah. And
so I gave her $5 and then I was like, I don't need a flower though. So I feel like some people are going to be like, here's a change. I don't want the book.
Oh, yeah, I guess like, you're right. And
okay.
that hurts in a different kind of way. All right. Maybe don't do this.
More than a form letter from a publisher? I don't know.
Yeah, good point.
Anyway.
All that to say, Kim's interview was very eye-opening. And we ended up, I remember I did the interview, and it was a pretty long interview. It was like an hour and a half, 2 hours almost. We were on that call for a while. And then afterwards, I ended up talking to you for another 2 hours about everything we talked about on that call.
We did, yeah. That was a good conversation.
It was. It was really fascinating because by the end of the call, because her patrons get to be on it live while you're doing it, and then she'll either release it to the public or break it up or whatever. Mm-hmm. But one of the patrons was like, they defined our relationship as very... I think they used the word egalitarian.
Sure.
And I was like, I don't mind that word, I don't think. I'm not even going to lie to you, I don't quite remember what egalitarian means. You know what I mean?
No, that's utilitarian. Egalitarian is just like fair for all, I think.
Oh, okay. I was about to pull out my phone.
I think actually maybe pull it out.
Yeah.
Because there was one that was the greatest good for the greatest number by one definition, and that might be egalitarian.
Egalitarian. Oh, I found it. Relating to or believing in the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities.
Okay, well, it's close.
I mean, I
it's
like
a different
that.
definition.
It was just really fascinating because the more Kim would ask about the different roles we had, people would chime in with their thoughts. And one person said, I can't remember, what did they say? It was something to the degree of, this woman seems like she and her husband don't have very defined roles. And that seems like not okay or something. I can't remember what the comment was.
No, so, okay.
And I was like, how fascinating.
So that's a good comment. And you would think that me needing structure would have a problem with that. But there's fail-safes built into that system. So if I don't, like, I usually make dinner.
Yeah.
But you still know how to cook.
I do.
So when I get sick, we either go out to eat, or you get takeout, or you cook.
Yeah.
And then it's the same thing with, well, typically you do laundry, but when you get busy or do errands, I finish the laundry.
Right.
So there's this one role, and Hallease needs to do the laundry, and if Hallease isn't here, then the laundry doesn't get done.
Right.
That's a great way to, one, start squabbles and have the marriage erode, and then two, live in filth.
Yeah.
But when you go out of town, I still have to keep house. It doesn't run as well or as cleanly as it does when you're here.
Sure.
But I mean, you don't come back to a mess.
Right. Yeah.
The dishes aren't just like stacked up in the sink. And there are roles in our relationships. We flip. So right now you're earning money, the most money, if you want to qualify it like that. Mm. And at some point, maybe I'll start contributing. Hopefully I will.
Let's go ahead and speak that.
And then maybe at some point it's 50-50, and maybe at some point it's whatever split, 60-40, 70-30. Maybe I start earning more money than you. But that was a joke between us. You were posing to me, well, what if I start earning more money than you? Mm-hmm. And I said, great.
Yeah,
then I can retire.
You did say that a few years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it. It's like, hurry up with that. That YouTube money, not to put pressure on you, but I don't want to be here anymore.
That is true.
Nursing.
Yeah.
I was talking about nursing.
Right, yeah. It was just a very interesting conversation of how, I don't know, I guess people kind of come into relationships. And I think I also realized in having that discussion with her of just how much, like, obviously, I did have some baggage. We all do coming into relationships, even if you do come into it relatively young, like we did. Mm-hmm. But so much of like how much people take on the product of like their environments that they were in when it comes to their time to start whatever kind of relationship they're going to start. I think the reason why I don't have the anxious avoidant relationship type is because I grew up in the house I grew up in. With two, like, my parents aren't divorced, and they also figured out whatever roles they wanted to subscribe to and not, and how they even discussed money. Like, when I was talking to Kim about, like, there's not a account that I have that you don't have access to. Now, whether you decide to log into it or not, up to you. But like
usually.
But you have access to all the money at all times, and that's because that's how my parents did it, and they were very conscious about like explaining that to me. And do you remember at the beginning of our marriage, I was like that. I was like, we need a joint account. Why do you have accounts that I can't see? And you were like, calm down. I just do. And I was like, that's weird. I don't think that's okay. And you were like, I don't like that you do think it's okay. You know?
I think
you
I was
weren't
okay.
that into it.
I wasn't that into it, but I eventually warmed up to it.
Yeah. But I don't know why. I think I just pushed it. Just little stuff like that. Like I forget that people are like married, but not completely like
intertwined.
Yeah, I just forget that a lot. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with that.
And that being said,
in the comments below,
if you're in a relationship and the finances are split between the two of you, the two people in the relationship. Mm-hmm. If suddenly one person was supporting the two of them, mm-hmm. how would they feel about that? Do they feel like they would have power over the other person, or would they feel trapped? Vice versa.
Oh, you just want and this is for anyone who's listening / watching, who's in a relationship, like, period.
Does a relationship need to be split 50-50 in terms of finances? Or do you feel like by losing that control that you would have less power and therefore feel trapped?
Okay.
Hypothetically, if they are in relationships, if they're not in relationships.
Yeah, sure. I would be curious to hear the answer that people have as well in the comments below. Well, stumble well.
Stumble on.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.